They called us misfits. Outcasts. Too loud, too weird, too creative. Too much of something that didn't fit their box. We were told to tone it down. Fit in. Follow the template. Be like everyone else, and maybe, just maybe, you'll make it. But here's what they never told you. The misfits were the ones who changed everything. Every movement that shifted culture. Every invention that rewired the world. Every piece of art that made someone feel less alone. That was a misfit. That was someone like you. Think about the last time you felt it, that pull to do something your own way. To say something out loud that everyone else was only thinking. To build something that didn't have a category yet. That impulse? That's not a defect. That's the signal. This is the story of SURREALMIND. This is the story of the Misfits Society. And more than anything, this is your story too. Stay with me. Because by the end of this, you'll never see yourself the same way again. Not because we're going to tell you something new. But because we're going to remind you of something you already knew, and talked yourself out of believing. So what actually is a misfit? Not the movie character. Not the insult thrown at you in school. A misfit, in its truest definition, is simply someone who doesn't fit the standard mold. And for most of history, that word was used as a weapon. You're too different. You don't belong here. We handed that word back, and made it a badge. Think about every creative who ever built something from scratch. Every entrepreneur who bet on an idea when the world said it was stupid. Every artist who poured something real into their work when the algorithm demanded something safe. They were misfits. All of them. Being a misfit doesn't mean broken. It means unbounded. It means you refuse to let the world shrink you down to something comfortable for people who were never going to celebrate you anyway. A misfit sees the world as it could be, not just as it is. A misfit asks questions that make people uncomfortable, not to cause trouble, but because they genuinely need the answer. A misfit makes things that didn't exist before. Connections no one saw. Solutions no one thought to try. The misfit is the one who keeps moving when everyone else has already decided the thing is impossible. That's not a flaw. That's the most powerful thing a human being can carry into any room they walk into. SURREALMIND didn't start in a boardroom. It didn't start with a business plan or a pitch deck. It started with a feeling, the one you get when you look around and realize you don't belong to the world that was handed to you. It started with creative work that didn't fit into a genre. Ideas that refused to be categorized. A voice that didn't sound like anyone else's. And instead of trying to fit in, we leaned in. We said, what if the thing that makes us strange is actually the thing that makes us powerful? What if we stopped apologizing for seeing the world differently? What if instead of building a brand that looked like every other brand, we built something that looked exactly like us? Surreal. Layered. Unexpected. Full of things that don't belong together, but somehow, when you put them in the same space, make perfect sense. SURREALMIND was built to be a home for people who've always felt like they were on the outside looking in. For creatives, dreamers, builders, and question askers. For the people who couldn't sleep because their mind was too full of things they needed to make. For the ones who doodled in the margins when they should have been taking notes, because the margins were where the real ideas lived. We built this studio, this community, this brand, for you. And the more we built, the more we realized, we weren't alone. We never were. Here's an uncomfortable truth. Society doesn't just misunderstand misfits, it fears them. Because conformity is a survival mechanism. Groups require agreement. Systems require predictability. And the person who refuses to follow the script threatens all of that. So the world developed a very efficient machine for turning misfits into something manageable. It's called pressure. Social pressure. Academic pressure. Family pressure. Cultural pressure. Do it this way. Want the right things. Be acceptable. Don't make people uncomfortable. Shrink yourself down to something that fits. And most people, not because they're weak, but because they're human, eventually surrender. They put the creative work in the drawer. They stop asking the difficult questions. They learn to perform belonging even when they feel none. They get very good at wearing a version of themselves that the world approves of. And somewhere along the way, they lose the thread back to who they actually were. That's the real tragedy. Not the judgment. The self-erasure. But some people, a rare few, can't make themselves fit no matter how hard they try. And that resistance, that stubborn refusal to become something you're not? That is the seed of everything meaningful. The world doesn't know what to do with you. That's not a problem. That's confirmation that you're carrying something real. Creativity is not decoration. It is not a nice-to-have skill you list on a resume somewhere between teamwork and communication. Creativity is a survival tool. A lens. A language. And misfits, people who've spent their whole lives translating their inner world into something the outer world can receive, misfits are fluent in it. When you've never been given the standard template for how to live, you build your own. That is creativity in its rawest form. The musician who couldn't afford lessons so they invented their own technique. The designer who dropped out of school because the curriculum couldn't keep up with their vision. The filmmaker who shot everything on a phone because no studio would take the risk. These aren't stories of disadvantage. They're stories of necessity becoming invention. Constraint forcing genius. Misfits don't create despite their struggles. They create because of them. Every scar becomes a symbol. Every setback becomes a scene. The isolation becomes atmosphere. The confusion becomes texture. The very things that were supposed to hold them back become the fuel. And the work that comes out of that kind of life, that's the work that actually moves people. That's the work people send to their friends at midnight with a message that just says, this. That's the work that outlasts the person who made it. That's what we're here to make. Being an outcast teaches you something that belonging never can. It teaches you who you actually are when no one is clapping for you. When there's no social reward for showing up as yourself, and you still do it, that's when you discover what you're actually made of. The outcast learns resilience not as a concept but as a lived reality. You get rejected enough times that rejection stops meaning what it used to mean. You stop waiting for permission. You stop looking over your shoulder. And at some point, and this is the moment everything changes, you stop wanting the approval of people who were never going to give it. That's freedom. Not the comfortable kind. The real kind. The kind that lets you make things without a filter. Speak without hedging. Build without apology. The outcast also develops something deeply valuable, observation. When you're not performing for the in-group, you get to watch. You notice things that people inside the system can't see because they're too busy maintaining it. You see the gap between what people say and what they actually do. You see where the real need is. Where the real story is. And that vision, that outsider clarity, is one of the most bankable skills in the creative world. The Misfits Society was built by people who found that freedom and decided they wanted to share it. There's a particular loneliness that comes with being a creative misfit. You look around and you can't find your people. The mainstream spaces feel wrong. The niche spaces feel too small. The professional spaces demand you package yourself into something sellable. And so you build in isolation. You create in private. You share the work and wonder if anyone out there actually gets it. You wonder if the thing that feels most like you is actually interesting to anyone else. That uncertainty is brutal. We built the Misfits Society because that loneliness is real, and it's also unnecessary. Because there are more of us than we think. We're just scattered. Disconnected. Each of us convinced we're the only one who sees the world this way. The community we're building isn't for people who want to network. It's not another space full of hustle culture content and surface-level advice. It is a living, breathing ecosystem of people who create because they cannot not create. People who question because the answers they've been given don't add up. People who are building something that didn't exist before them, because they had no other choice. A place where you can be in process, not finished, not polished, not ready, and still belong. That's who we are. That's who we're building for. Every brand has values. Most of them are the same. Innovation. Integrity. Excellence. Quality. Words that mean everything and nothing at the same time. So let me be specific about what SURREALMIND actually stands for. We stand for creative courage. Making the thing even when you don't know if it's good enough. Sharing it even when it feels exposed. Trying again after the version that didn't land. We stand for radical authenticity. Not the curated version. The real one. The one that includes the contradictions and the rough edges. We stand for the long game. We're not here for viral moments or quick wins. We're here to build something that compounds. Something that lasts. We stand for community over competition. Your win is our win. Your growth makes us all stronger. We don't believe in a creative ecosystem built on scarcity thinking. We stand for imagination without apology. The surreal. The unexpected. The thing that shouldn't work but does. The concept that makes you tilt your head and then nod slowly. And we stand for the misfits. Not as a brand demographic. Not as a marketing angle. But as a genuine belief that the people the world pushed aside are the ones who will ultimately shape what comes next. Let's talk about the work. Because at the end of every philosophy, every brand story, every manifesto, what actually matters is what you make. The work is the proof. Not the follower count. Not the revenue. Not the press coverage. The thing you put into the world and left there. The video that made someone feel seen at 2 in the morning. The design that turned a small business into something people believe in. The track that came on during the exact moment someone needed it most. That's the work. And that work requires something most people don't want to give. It requires honesty. The kind that costs something. Because the safest creative work is the work no one remembers. Safe is forgettable. Safe doesn't move anyone. Safe protects your ego at the cost of your impact. The work we value at SURREALMIND takes a position. It says something. It stands for something. Even if that thing alienates some people, because the people it finds will feel found in a way that matters. We make work that would rather divide the room than bore it. Because the people who were meant to find you, they will. But only if you're actually being you. Only if the work carries your actual fingerprint, not a filtered, optimized, audience-tested version of it. The real thing. Always the real thing. We want to be clear about something. SURREALMIND is a brand. A studio. A creative home. But what we're building toward is bigger than all of that. We're building toward a world where the misfit doesn't spend the first half of their life learning to hate themselves and the second half trying to unlearn it. Where a kid who thinks differently isn't a problem to be managed, but a perspective to be protected and developed. Where creative work is valued not just commercially, but culturally. Where the people who make things get the same respect as the people who sell them. That's a movement. And movements don't start at the top. They start in the margins. In the corners. In the quiet conversations between people who finally found someone who gets it. In the comment that says, "I thought I was the only one." In the DM that becomes a collaboration. In the creative who finally decides to post the thing they've been sitting on for months because they watched something here that made them feel brave enough. Every person who joins this community. Every piece of work shared under this banner. That's the movement happening. Slowly. Genuinely. Without shortcuts. That is what SURREALMIND is actually building. And we're inviting you to be part of it. Before we close, I want to speak directly to you. Not the audience. Not the algorithm. You, the specific person watching this right now. If you've been watching this and something in you keeps saying yes, that feeling is real. Trust it. Don't talk yourself out of it on the drive home. If you've been sitting on a creative project, an idea, a vision, something you keep talking yourself out of because it doesn't make sense yet, listen to me, it doesn't have to make sense yet. The most important things rarely do at the beginning. If you've been feeling like the odd one out in every room you walk into, you're not broken. You just haven't found your room yet. If you've been told your ideas are too out there, too risky, too different is good. Stay different. Protect it. Don't sand down the edges. Because that difference is exactly what we're building space for. SURREALMIND exists because of people like you. Every piece of work we create, every video, every community post, it's made with you in mind. The one who's still figuring it out. The one who creates at midnight because that's when the rest of the world is quiet. The one who's been doing the work in private and wondering when it'll matter. It already matters. You already matter. And this is your invitation to stop building alone. This is your invitation to come home. So here's what comes next. If this resonated with you, if something in this video felt like it was written for you, we want you here. Subscribe to this channel. Not just for the content, but for the community behind it. Every video we release is a piece of the larger story we're telling. A story about what it means to create with intention. To build without permission. To show up as exactly who you are even when the world keeps asking you to be something more convenient. Drop a comment below and tell us, what's the one thing you're working on right now that feels most like you? No filters. No elevator pitch. Just the real thing. We read every single one. If this video moved something in you, share it. Not for us. For someone in your life who needs to hear it. Because the Misfits Society grows the same way every real community does. One genuine connection at a time. And if you want to go deeper, to be part of what we're actually building, the links are below. The doors are open. There is no application. There is no prerequisite. The only requirement is that you're real about who you are and what you're here to make. We are SURREALMIND. We are the Misfits Society. And we are just getting started. Welcome home.